Welcome to Parenthood Bites, the podcast where we explore life as a parent in tech. I'm your host, Chow, and I have over 15 years of experience in tech, and I'm also currently working as a career coach. I'm the proud mother of 3 incredible boys. In each episode, we have an inspiring guest who will share their remarkable story. You'll find their wisdom and insights both relatable and enriching, because after all, we're all in this parenting journey together. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 30 of Parenthood Bites. We're here today with Mallika Rao, who's an engineering manager at Netflix and currently lives in the Bay Area. Hi Mallika, how are you?
Hi, Chow. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to speak with you today because I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while.
Same. I was so looking forward to this, and I am super excited to be talking with you today and very happy to be on your podcast.
Thank you. And you said you were listening to some of the previous episodes. Did you hear like some people that you know?
Oh, yeah, totally. The moment you shared with me that you are doing this, I was like, more power to Chow. And I was so stoked that you decided to do this. I know you have a very diverse and rich network from having worked with you in the past to tap into. So I was definitely excited to see a few familiar names there. And I really enjoyed listening to those stories as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your support. So, how many kids do you have and how old are they?
Yeah, so my first one is 22 months now, baby boy. And then we are expecting our second baby in April. April 10 is my estimated due date. So we'll officially have two under two at home and gearing up for a lot of work, I guess.
Oh, that's so much fun. Do you know if the second one is a boy or a girl?
Second one's going to be a boy as well. So I hear it's going to be not really 2x, but maybe like 8x or 16x, something like that, of the energy levels. Well, you know about it very well. Super excited, but also, all the work that comes with it. I'm sure we'll go with the flow and just keep it very organic. But it's just joyous to have more babies at home, I guess. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then they'll probably be about 23 months apart, right? So they'll be
That's
pretty
right.
close in age.
Yeah, that's exactly right. 23 months is what it's going to be.
My older two are 20 months apart. And so they're pretty close, and they can help each other out and stuff. And so it's a really good age, the two.
We are retrospectively learning that we did not plan it that way. I guess if we had had our first one earlier, we had our first one pretty late. But if we had him earlier, maybe, we would have planned it for a bigger age gap. But now I'm reading a lot on this smaller age gap, and I hear and read so many pros to it, especially with respect to the interest that they'll share or the bonding and all of that. So I'm sure it'll have its own struggles and challenges as well, but it's kind of very interesting of all the pros that it brings, I guess, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, for sure it's hard at first, right? Having two kids under the age
Hmm.
of 5, that's definitely hard. But then it's also, that time goes by really quickly. And then you see as they can play together and things like that. It's really precious and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's what we are hoping for. And every time we listen someone share that, it's a really nice thing. So thank you, Cham.
Yeah. So what brought you to tech?
My dad is a scientist, and I grew up in a family. We just had a lot of thinkers and engineers and just people who were into critical thinking and logic, and they just brought this scientific thinking to daily life. Like my grandparents, my granddad was a big fan of thinking about pros and cons and coming up with a hypothesis, and even for small things that we would do or like simple decisions that we would run at home as kids, we were just encouraged to always bring that little bit of curiosity and open mindedness. And hey, what if you're wrong? Think about it in a different way. So, just that scientific bent of mind was always encouraged. And I was very much influenced by that. And I think it was also during my formative years that I would spend a lot of time. Of course, my dad was a scientist, but also with my grandparents, my uncles. More or less, we were around that field of like, mathematics, science, engineering, and things like that. And I think that was very influential for me. And I was encouraged to go into any field at home. But then somehow I saw myself gravitating towards topics like mathematics and nature. I was also a lot into music and connecting those patterns together. And somehow that led me to exploring computer science. And I feel like it also is a very creative space. Computer science brings in a lot of those open ended problems. I was fascinated by fractals and, thinking about those paradoxes as a kid, but then, it continued as an interest later on as well. So it just felt like a very natural and organic choice for me. And that's how I went into computer science. And I've always been a very proud member of the tech community because I feel like we have a new problem to solve every day. So I guess it was more of a natural journey for me, and there has never been a looking back. I've had many hobbies which are very different from the work that I do, but it's all grounded with the profession that I have in the tech industry. So I guess that's a little bit of the historical context there.
That's really neat. So it sounds like just something you've been interested in since you were a kid and been surrounded by.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool. So, how many years were you in tech before you became a parent?
I was in tech for 12 years before I had my first kid. So I guess I started off my full time journey somewhere around 2011. And my first one was born in 2022. So right around that 10 to 12-year time frame, I would say.
And you were already an engineering manager when you became a parent?
Yes, when I became a parent, I was already an engineering manager for a couple of years. And before that, I have been a long time IC and, of course, transitioned into being a tech lead and then into management. But I was well in the battlefield of engineering management when I had my first one. Yeah.
Nice. So, what made you want to be an engineering manager?
I think primarily it was how I was seeing myself change a little bit in my profession, in my career. And I told you that I was already a tech lead, and this was at a startup. And I was one of these folks who was super proud of being very close to the code. And I love doing code reviews. I love supporting my team technically. And maybe even as an EM, you kind of do a lot of things that can be thought of as what TLs could be doing, right? It's a very blurry boundary. I was still very much involved with, driving that influence, collaboration, alignment with stakeholders, be it PMs across functions. I love doing all of that. I was definitely very much involved with the code and, everything with code reviews and guiding my team technically. But what I wasn't doing was the people management or being responsible for their performance. And I realized, and this was something that my manager asked me to do, where he was like, "Are you interested in doing this? Do you want to try pivoting your role as an engineering manager?" And I was like, "No, why? I'm very happy as a tech lead. I want to continue in this." And I was naive, and that was the mindset that I brought into that conversation. And he's like, "Maybe you should give it a try for 3 months, and if you don't like, you can always like go back to what you're doing." And I realized retrospectively that being responsible for people eventually lets you actually have more impact, because now you can kind of chart the path for how you want to advocate for them. How do you want to show your allyship in a tactical way? And how do you kind of, by just being responsible for their performance and growth, you can do so much more for the product, you can do so much more for the business. And otherwise you're kind of having that pseudo impact but not really, and you're not really fostering that overall growth mindset on the team. And I think that was like a changing perspective for me, also an inflection point in my career where I was like, this actually rounds it off really well and it makes it a more wholesome story. I want to own all of it. The hiring, the performance, of course, with the technical strategy, the vision setting, and everything that comes with it. It's when you kind of own everything, is when you're kind of having that overall impact. So I guess that was my reason, and there has not been a looking back after that.
I love that. Very similar to you. I felt like being a tech lead, being an engineer, I could work on one project, but then if I'm managing the team, I can influence all the projects and help with all the projects. And I love that. And then also helping people grow their careers. That was very exciting. And I know you're very passionate about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Just what you said resonates very strongly with me. I think at some point of time, it's about having that overarching view and being able to context switch and decide what level of detail you want to operate with the eyes on the goals and where you're going as a team, as an org, and as a business, right? And I find that very interesting, and it really depends on the company. There's never a dull day, and I call it the NP hard problem of engineering management, where you're constantly flexible and keeping yourself fluid enough to kind of iterate effectively.
Just like being a parent, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the parental leave like when you had your first child? And then what is it going to be like for your second?
Yeah, with the first one, it was the usual 20-week paid parental leave that I had. And it sounded like a comfortable leave of absence for me back then, before at least I went into my postpartum. And then I felt like I had a plan. I was like, 5 months, this is what I'm doing. This is when my baby is going to start solids. This is how I'm going to kind of start nursing or like stop nursing. All of that was in my mind, but boy, did I know that postpartum's only gonna like land in my lap once it's here. There's no way, at least I did not have a way to kind of plan for it. I felt like I had a plan, but not until it kind of arrived, and realized the importance of flexibility only later. But yeah, it did seem like a fair time off from work to kind of focus on baby and self and family. So yeah, the usual 20 weeks is what I got.
What about for the second child? What is that going to be like?
Yeah, with the second one, because it's so much company dependent and employer specific as well, I guess. With the second one, because now I'm with a different company, it's definitely way more generous, and I feel so much more supported as a mom, where I'm encouraged to take anywhere up to 12 months of paid parental leave.
That's amazing.
And I have the freedom and responsibility to define that time frame as to what's appropriate for me. When do I really feel like coming back to work? When do I feel strong enough to go back to work in an effective manner? And what do I need as a mom to kind of just maybe focus on the family, maybe more on the bonding between the two kids, or just on self-care? So that I feel very grateful for, just having that flexibility and that choice, and also to kind of break it up in any way that is meaningful to me and my family. Will I take that much of it? That's another question. It also depends. It's a very personal thing as well. I don't know if I need all of it, but even that choice to kind of have access to it, if there is a need for it, and you never know how postpartum is until it's here, it's a privilege, and super grateful for that.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, you may not use it all, but knowing that you have that option is really amazing to have. So, after you had your first son, how was it transitioning back to work?
This is going to be a funny story, because I was prepared to go back to work 20 weeks. And I felt like I had a plan, but then there was an acquisition that happened with the company that I was with, which kind of affected the future plans of how I would be kind of going back to work. And overnight, I realized that I would not be going back to work and it's probably going to be an extended leave. And, I remember that day, that night where I was like, oh my God, there's a new member in the family. And I was just completing my 20 weeks. I think I was like maybe 17, 18-ish weeks into my leave and just getting ready to transition back and put together like a phased plan in place. And then I realized that, the acquisition kind of changes the structure of the company and I might not be going back to work anymore. Overnight, I remember just feeling so anxious about having this baby at home and not having work. And also, a side of me always has this need to kind of express myself professionally. And I was looking forward to kind of go back to work. I felt like, okay, I have a support system in place. And I had started thinking about what I would start doing when I was going back to work and all of that. And then to realize that I was not going back was pretty challenging. But then retrospectively, I think it was one of the best things that happened to me because that meant few more months of exclusive time with my baby at home. And I went back to work when my first one was 9 months, a little more than 9 months. I found a job and they were nice enough to kind of wait for a few months for me to start off, given that, a few things had been happening and there were so many changes that I went through in my life during those 2 to 3 months. I was very grateful to have a delayed start date, which meant I would be spending an extended period of time with my baby. So my 20 weeks of maternity leave became 9 months of leave. And today, when I look back, that is one of the best things that happened to me. And I like to think it has an impact on the way my baby and I bonded. And I was just there for the solids journey. I was there to kind of put those arts and crafts together, play more games with him, and just truly be present. Yes, I was learning parenting too. And to be able to actually put them in practice, I needed time. And that's what I got. So it was a true blessing when I look back. I didn't feel that way back then. So I transitioned back to work after 9 months, I guess. And I had a lot of flexibility working from home and, just being able to decide my time and space and where I wanted to be each day to suit all the logistics, right? Like nursing, feeding the baby, being there for the home front while not compromising on the things that I was kind of accountable for at work. So it happened to be a very smooth transition when it happened, but it took a while for me to get back to work, I guess, and it was unplanned. So it was definitely a little anxious as it was happening. But that's the thing that I took away from it. Any opportunity that earns you time with your kids, I think, we should say yes to it. And especially if it happens like this organically, then it's a true blessing.
It's something that definitely at the moment it's very hard, but afterwards you realize like, oh, I was able to spend more time with my son, and that's definitely a blessing.
Yes, totally.
And so right now at your work, is it completely remote?
No, right now it's basically hybrid. There is nothing that mandates these many days or, these many hours or anything like that. It's really up to us on how we want to drive that schedule. I like to go in 2 to 3 days a week just because most of my team sits in Los Gatos and, I like to meet them and just, I like that social interaction of just meeting other colleagues, from other orgs or inside the org, and that ability to just see people in person and have that connection. So I go in 2 to 3 days a week, but the fact that, it's mostly up to you on how you should choose that. I think that is very empowering to me, and it also lifts off a lot of stress as a mom who's still kind of figuring out the time management of everything from meal prep, just creating that segregation between work and personal life. But yeah, that's how I kind of to use my time in the office versus home.
It's good to have that flexibility so you don't feel pressured either way. So is there a mother's room at work when you do decide to go in after your second child?
Yes, I had a tour recently and just visited all the mother's room on my floor in my building. Yeah, there are quite a few lactation rooms, mother's room, wellness rooms which are separate from the nursing rooms. So yeah, I foresee myself using them quite a bit. If it's anything like my first one, then I'm going to be spending some time there, I guess.
That's great. That's great that they have multiple of those. So you definitely can use it at your leisure.
Mhm.
So, what do you do for childcare now when you go into work?
Yeah, so right now we have a nanny for our first one, and that was also an evolving plan, I would say. When I was getting ready to get back to work around that 4.5, 5 month time frame with the first one, I was very much open to sending him to a daycare because, searching for a nanny with everything that I had in my mind, with things that were important to us as a family on simple things like how we talk to our baby or behaviors or the routine around like feeding, sleeping, play. I was like, unless we find an awesome nanny or who works for the entire family, who works out very well for the entire family, I'm very much open to sending him to a daycare. And we were hunting for daycare, but then because of my extended leave, I was able to have a little bit more time for interviewing more people and deciding who would work out for us, who would work well with me, with the baby, with the entire family. And we were just so grateful to find someone who first one bonded really well. And even now to see them develop that bond is very precious. So the plan is to continue with the same person for our second one as my first one transitions to the daycare, as I plan to get back to work maybe 6 months into my postpartum. So that's what's been working out for us right now. But like I said, I think my biggest takeaway with parenting is like just be ready for any changes, to pivot anytime and be flexible. But yeah, so grateful to have a great nanny for our first one.
That's awesome. It's great when you find someone that bonds well with your child, that you can trust with your child. How did you find your nanny?
Yeah, that is such a good question, Chow. I felt like I struggled with it so much. I think I still struggle with it. To first kind of just share how I found her was, I was connected with a friend for another nanny who she had referred, and she was giving me a referral and, just going over some of the details. And she was like, oh, like if you're telling me all these things, at that point of time I was also reading, as a first time mom, I was reading a lot of parenting literature. I was getting drawn to the Montessori, the respect for infant educating parenting styles. I was reading a lot about Waldorf and all of those parenting philosophies. And for me, it was very important that whoever was taking care of the baby, give them that respect or treat them as whole human beings, and really trust that they're capable of doing things, except that physically they're still developing those skill sets, but otherwise they've come down with a lot of power, right? So that respect was very important. And I was sharing this with my friend, and she's like, you should really talk to my previous nanny who is actually now looking for work, because she's awesome. And it was definitely just pure word of mouth. And we connected and we did a few play dates with her, and it was there, it just clicked right away. And I'd already interviewed quite a few nannies by then to know that what works out and doesn't work out mutually. I guess it's so much between the nanny and the family, and this was instant. I also think it's so much about the communication with the mom, and just that collaboration brings in so much of good energy. And that's what I appreciate about our current nanny. Like with every milestone, with every change that the kid is going through, we are changing as a family. And the fact that they're so open to work with the family and honor the fact that someone else's baby, and there needs to be that collaboration to make it a seamless environment, I really value that. But I struggle a lot with the fact that most of the babies around this age group go to the daycare. And when my kid's not going to a daycare, I constantly get asked this question, oh, is he going to a daycare, when is he going to a daycare? And I'm like, we're very happy he's at home. At least 0 to 3 means a lot to me, that he's able to spend that time around us and see us, even if not like spend time with us, because we are locked up in a room and working from morning to evening. It's a struggle socially sometimes, I guess, but I've kind of just decided to make peace with it and gotten better at navigating those conversations.
And it's okay. It's what works for you, what works for your family, what you're happy with. That's all that matters. I struggled with the same thing when my kids were young because we had them at home with a nanny. But we're like, they're learning a lot from the nanny and they like her. She takes good care of them. And that's what works for us. Right. And eventually, you were saying eventually you'll send your older one to daycare. And eventually when your younger one gets older, they will go to daycare too. They will have plenty of time to socialize with other kids and other people. So, you do things at your pace.
Yeah, you just spoke my mind there. And when I see him interact at home and how he's learning and how meaningfully he plays with the activities that we set up for him, or the at least 0 to 3, I feel like is a very formative, and we feel like then not a lot is happening, but it is. It's such a developmentally intensive period. So the way he does his eating, and then the sleeping, the way he sleeps in his room with all the sound machine and the nice ambience and the way he plays, I'm like, I don't want to change this. At least till he's 2.5. If we have it, I want to have it. And just like you said, I think it's what works for each of us, and being ready for when it doesn't work, doing something else, but like finding peace and meaning in what's working. We have realized that for sure.
Yeah. So are you planning to send him when he's 2.5 or older?
Yes, 2.5, I think, is when will be right for him to, just from a timeline perspective, because around that time is when I'm planning to go back to work. He'll be 2.5 around that time, and our current nanny will transition to the second baby. And, maybe it's the right time for him to, like you said, start having all that social interaction and get ready for a different kind of environment. So that's the plan right now. So right now we are also doing daycare tours because we're sure we won't have time for that after the second one's here. So we are just going on all those wait lists. It's crazy how fast they go. So just in that mode for sure.
It's good that you're starting to look at it now because, like you said, one, you won't have time, and two, the wait lists take a while. So putting the name on the wait list now is good planning ahead.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm sure we won't get it all right and perfect, but we are trying to keep as few decisions as possible for later.
And there is no perfect, you do what you can and you adapt and then you adjust. So if something comes up then, you'll deal with it then. You can only do so much right now.
That's true.
So what is your day-to-day routine right now with your son?
I think the morning really starts off with me planning for work because he does sleep in till 8:30 every morning. So right around that time, I'm done with my breakfast. Just that half an hour, 45 minutes is very precious and what brings sanity into my life. So I safeguard that time a lot. And towards the end of that half an hour is when my first one wakes up, and I like starting my day with that cuddle and just like seeing his face and being there when he wakes up just a little bit. I think right around that time is when our nanny also comes in, but most of the days he's up a little before that. So I get to spend about 15-20 minutes in his room, just like, getting all those energies for myself. And then after that, usually work is kicking in and I have my meetings going on, and my work day really kind of is going in full force between that 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. is usually when I mostly like to have all my meetings in. And then 4 to 5 is usually my focus time, just to kind of take stock of the day. Though it's not possible every day, like there is something going on that gets overridden on that focus time. But generally, I like to kind of start wrapping up any collaborations by 5 p.m. and then just like taking stock and wrapping up on any docs or materials or pending messages, emails. It usually takes about 6:30 for that to happen. I have this thing recently that I do. If I go to work, I'm back home before 5 to just kind of work that commute. So that drive back home, and I usually don't drive these days, I take a shared ride back home. And that is my time where, it's time and space. It's a separation between work and home. And once I'm kind of at the doorstep, it's no work usually. I try to. And if I'm home, then I usually keep my showers for the evening these days. And it started to work very well for me, where as I wrap up my day, usually around 5:36, I take a quick shower and I kind of wash off the day. That's how I feel. And then after that, it's like I try to not go into that space where my laptop is, and try to just keep that boundary separated both in time and space, because there was a time where I would just take my laptop everywhere around the home, and I would feel like there was work waiting for me in every corner, and I would get reminded of work every time I kind of walked in the kitchen or the family room. But now I'm very good with just locking myself up in that one room, and when I'm done, and I try not to kind of think about it later in the evening. So after that, when he wakes up in the evening, it's all like playtime and just like talking about, he's still babbling, but still talking about his day and like asking how it went. I really try to like be there in the moment and not check those Slack messages, or, not be on the phone. We have a thing at home where when we are around him, we usually don't use our phones. We keep it away so that he doesn't see us even checking those messages just for 10 seconds or 30 seconds. And he's developing all this curiosity to then look into the screens. We don't want that to happen. We try really hard to like be away from our devices. So I just enjoy that so much, just being around him and seeing him and witnessing him play and engage. That brings me a lot of relaxation and joy. And the days I'm not able to be fully present, I can see how I'm not fully relaxed, and I'm kind of guilty of that stress on those days, because I knew I could have been in the moment, but I chose not to, and I decided to kind of multitask mentally. So that kind of gives me perspective on how crucial those 3 or 4 hours in the evening is, my family.
It's great that you do that. You have that ritual and set those boundaries, and you're really present in the moment, because it's so easy with cell phones. It's so easy for us to, let me just check this message. Let me just do that. So it's really awesome that you're being intentional about it and setting those boundaries, and you notice the difference. That's really great that you do that.
Yes. Yeah, true that. And I don't think it happened. We learned a lot along the way, especially as we transitioned, just figuring out our relationship with work as parents. We just had to try a lot of things, and things kept failing. But my husband and I had like a plan or a goal, or a way that we wanted to kind of be as a family more mindfully. And we're like, yeah, baby steps. Let's keep it iterative and keep trying out stuff. So simple things like how we talk, our tone, our behaviors, how do we practice being curious and open-minded in the way we speak with him, or simple things like keeping our phones away, are all evolutions of all those trials and errors that we have had in the past few months, I would say.
Definitely. So how has your work life changed since you became a parent?
I think if I have to put a theme to it, it's the way I make decisions, I guess, mostly around both how I prioritize and bring perspective with respect to time, and also the space. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what I mean by space. And it definitely required a few things to happen in the past few months for me to realize the importance of being surrounded by the right kind of principles. For example, time wise, we hear this a lot, and it's definitely a very effective one for me as well, where it just brought so much of perspective and priority, and the ability to say no to things just got so much more clearer. And with that came that confidence as well, where if I look at my list of all the things that I say no to on a weekly basis, whether at work or in my personal life, it's way longer than that small tiny list that I say yes to. And somehow that was not challenging. After I became a parent, it felt easy, and it felt like I gave myself more permission to do that. So time wise, I feel like it's just made it so much more easier for me to prioritize my time. And tactically, of course, what that means is being more and more clear on the calendar as to how I set my time. How do I use my focus time? When I set focus time, I usually don't do anything else except for what I reserve that focus time for, because I know if I don't do that, if I spend time going down and getting a snack, or maybe, like getting a walk, not that I don't like to do those things, but I'm like, there's a time for everything everything now, because if I don't do this now, it means going after 7 p.m. in the evening to complete this thing. So, it brings in a lot of perspective to actually guard those focus times for what they're meant for, using my morning hours and the wrapping up hours to actually organize my day, organize my week so much more effectively. So the usual table stakes that I guess parents usually do with respect to calendar management just became a little bit more calibrated and tuned after I started parenting. And then space as well. This was a big, right now I work at Netflix. Before this, I was briefly at Walmart for a few months. And I think it took me those experiences to realize that at this point of time, as a mom and as someone who's expecting another baby, I want to be surrounded by certain kind of people, certain kind of healthy conversations. I want a certain level of quality around me, because if I'm thinking about these things in a certain way, I want to be in the right culture. And it's not just about having access to the right kind of benefits or parenting philosophies or anything like that, but it's overall on how we walk that talk. How do we talk to each other about creating this support system? Do we really mean it when we say things like flexible, or that support community for moms, for parents? And I realize that there are cultures that are more traditional than the others, for the lack of a better word. There are various different grays in between those whites and blacks, right? And I have been in those meetings and conversations where I'm like, you're saying you're flexible, but do you really mean it? When I would see other people talk to maybe a returning parent from a parental leave, or like they're talking about flexibility around nursing, or flexibility, or even for dads, I think the flexibility around they being available. So I just realized that now I want to be surrounded by spaces which are more healthy, not just with respect to parenting, but just how we think about these as people. So that changed a lot. And I think now my decision making criteria on where I want to work, how do I want to like plan my career, is all dictated by these baseline criteria, right? Which otherwise 10 years ago I wouldn't care about, but right now it brings so much more meaning. I guess like that's one of the primary ways it has changed my thinking, work wise and life wise, after parenting.
Definitely changes your perspectives on things.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your biggest struggle or challenge being a parent in tech?
Being a parent in tech, I think primarily, if I think about myself as a parent, the biggest challenge for me is how do I make myself available to my family, to my kids, and be there for those experiences so that I can participate in shaping them, and at the same time take away that joy from being present in those experiences, right? And for that, I think for me to be able to do that, I need to unlock those cycles of time without giving up on who I am professionally, what am I accountable for, how do I plan my growth in my career, and how do I really be good at what I do, and maybe in most of the cases be great at what I do. And that's a constant struggle where you're fighting for time, because both of these are kind of going for the same resource. And I find that as a challenge, where there's a voice in me which keeps saying you can't have it all, but then I want to kind of try and be good at whatever we kind of pick up and say yes to. So that's definitely, I think, one of the challenges. I don't know if it is specific to tech. Maybe it's there in any kind of profession. I do feel on most of the days we are blessed. I definitely feel that blessing that comes with the flexibility I have. And I feel like so much of it is because I am in the tech industry, where there is flexibility around remote work, maybe extended periods of time where you can be geographically away from your primary work location and still be very effective at work, given you're surrounded with the right kind of systems and people. But I do feel like that's just a general challenge I have, where I'm constantly thinking about, there are so many days where I just don't have that time. I have 100 or maybe 1,000,000 of those ideas to kind of put together for my family, for my kids, like do STEM activities, or like set up this craft activity, or like be there for them in more meaningful ways. but I can't do that because my time's kind of locked up somewhere else. So just that time management, I think, is a constant struggle for me. That's a big one. I think the second one is just in general how to kind of keep the opinions and biases as much as possible away from parenting and let them discover their personalities, and how can I be more of that witness, or let them lead that way as they're interacting with the natural world. But again, that goes back to the fact that what can I do to kind of unlock my cycles and plan my life in such a way that I can continue to be effective, but I don't have to kind of be locked up for those 12 hours of my time just thinking about work. So yeah, I guess that's like a constant struggle.
Yeah, for sure. But I think definitely you need to give yourself grace. There's only so much time in a day, and we do the best we can for our kids, for work, all of that. So definitely give yourself some grace and don't be too hard on yourself.
Yes, that's true. I'm still figuring that out. And it's so interesting you mentioned that. I'm definitely realizing more of that importance for self care and safeguarding that time for doing things that bring sanity just to me as an individual, so that I can kind of pump myself back into being the kind of person I want to be in all the roles that I play, I guess. So, still figuring that out.
Yeah, you definitely have to take care of yourself to be your best self.
Mm-hmm.
So, with your son being 22 months right now, what do you struggle the most with his current age?
I think it goes back to a little bit about something I brought up, on one of the previous ones, which is I truly believe they have their personalities, they have their thoughts. I have no idea what's going on in that little head of his, and all those ideas and imaginations. And I like to think that they're very whole thoughts, and they're very capable of forming those opinions and having that clarity. And especially now, as I see him getting closer to that 2 year mark, he exactly knows what to say no to, what to say yes to, what does he want more of. So I like to believe that there's a lot going on inside them. And what I struggle with is I come with my own preconceived biases and my own knowledge systems inside me as a person. And I have all these experiences and opinions, and it's a sometimes I feel like I can burden him with all that knowledge. And in simple things like how I play with him, and when he's doing a puzzle that he's really trying to figure it out, and he's taking a couple of iterations to just get that right, I'm like, I'm so tempted to do it for him or teach him the rules of a game, but he's completely capable of figuring them out. So simple things like that, is it's very challenging, and it's like a constant reminder for me to take a back seat and intervene more meaningfully as required, but most of the times like believe in that power of iteration and learning that is kind of innate to human nature. So that is my biggest struggle. I think it's a behavior change, it's a mindset change, so it's taking a while. At least I'm glad that I'm aware of it. I wasn't aware of it when he was born. It was later when I started watching videos and learning from other moms and reading resources that I kind of at least am aware of it. It'll probably settle in, and it's always an evolving journey for me, as well as they kind of grow and milestones happen. So I would say that's like my big one.
Yeah, and you really touched on it that it is evolving. He's growing every day, getting smarter day by day, learning new things. And so our mindset will evolve along with him.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that help you relax or unwind?
For me, I think right now I'm a big nature person. Just being able to either take those walks, or hikes. Now I'm not able to run, but I like to run a little bit as well through the week. I was big into my fitness regimen. I really like doing those HIIT kind of routines. And they brought in a lot of sanity and clarity into the way I thought or arranged my life. Of course, I'm not able to like run or do the HIIT part now, given that I'm so close to the delivery. But I still do my walks, and for me it's going without any devices. I don't take any cards, no cash, no phone, no AirPods, no devices basically. And it's really just my relationship with the nature. I just like observing things, thinking, and just being in that flow. So getting that 30, 40 minutes every day is like very meaningful for me. And I try to safeguard that time very aggressively. Recently, I think I've started to enjoy just put together STEAM activities for my first one. It just brings me a lot of joy to just look for all these activities on Instagram and read them in books, or, just remember from my physics and like science books, and put together small things for him and see how he kind of interacts with them. So I love doing that, setting up activities, and not just like letting him play with toys, I guess, which he does. I mean, there are like a million toys lying on the floor every
Yeah.
day, but just like building those activities is like, I feel very proud when I do it. So that gives me a lot of relaxation as well. Though I should say, I mean, that I'm only able to do it on weekends, not every day, even the simplest of the ones. But music brings me a lot of joy. Like, I am a big headphone nerd, so I have my favorites, and I like just putting on my favorite headphones, listening to my favorite music. I have one for every mood, a playlist that kind of goes for every mood, and that just helps me take my mind off things, and just get back a little bit of those energy cycles for whatever is coming up next, I guess. So currently those are my favorite things to kind of unwind and relax.
Yeah, that's really nice. And also, there's a lot of STEM books out there too for kids. I just interviewed someone who writes children's books, and she says she incorporates a lot of the STEM things into her books as well. So, books is another thing that can help as well.
Yeah, for sure. See, that's awesome. I'll have to connect with you after this to get that list and get some inspiration there, Chow.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just to plug her books a little bit, her name is Vicky Fang. And, if you search her on Amazon, you could see some of her books as well. And she writes like even board books for very little children that can help learn some of those things. So I thought that was really neat.
That's really neat. I think writing good children's books and board books is it's fantastic, and it's just so hard. I'm always browsing through my the books that we get for our first one, and I'm like, this is great, and this is not so great, and like it's so easy to write a mediocre one, and I'm always hunting for those good ones. Vicky Fang, I'm gonna look her up for sure. You don't know how interested, and like that takes up most of my time. So you're helping me a lot here, Chow.
I think she's episode 28. So that will be released before this one. So, the last question I like to ask is just what's something you would tell someone who's going to have kids, or something you wish you knew before you became a parent?
So something I wish I knew before I became a parent, I guess a couple of things. So one is I regret not having my first one way sooner in my life. And this is a running joke between my husband and I. We're like, what were we doing? We were goofing around and traveling and doing all those things. We could have done that with the kids, like we are way too late into this. And after we had our first one, we knew how precious of a gift it is and how much meaning it brings in our life. So just throwing it out there, everyone's story is very personal, but this is what I learned retrospectively. And the other thing I think I would like to tell parents to be is there's a lot of support out there, especially as tech parents, or just as parents. I think there's a lot of support if you know how to seek out and create that community for yourself. It's been a ground reality for me. I connected with so many of my girlfriends in a very different format, and I bonded with them in different fashions after I became a mom. And even with new mom friends, I think that community is so strong for me right now, and I know I wouldn't be anywhere without their support, and just that support to lean on, and know that I'm not alone, just meant so much to have those stories, and have that opinion from other friends that we trust. So there's definitely a lot of support there. So those would be the two biggest things, I think. And like I told you, I think it's going to be an eternal learning journey, I guess, because we are changing as humans, as parents, and then our kids are changing as humans. So, it's a complex equation. And I feel like change is the only constant that can kind of hold us all in that world. So, definitely approaching it that way for myself, at least.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you said that. And I think I'm on the other side of it. I was only married for 6 months before we got pregnant. And so I think it's nice that you were able to have, get to know each other as a couple first and then introduce a child. So I think that's really neat too, because we just jumped into it. We
Hmm.
didn't really have a lot of time as a couple before we had a kid. So that's the other side of it.
The other side of it. Yeah, there's always the other side to it, right? Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Like the more I listen to these, I think it's consoling somewhere and it does bring that perspective. So thank you, Chow.
For sure. And really, thank you for sharing your story, sharing your experiences today with us. And I know there's a lot of really, really awesome stuff in there that I think a lot of parents would really like to hear. So thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Chow, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And thank you so much for doing this for our community. What you're doing is so precious and it's going to be so treasurable for posterity. So thank you once again.
Thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Yes, you too.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Parenthood Bites. We hope you found our episode informative and entertaining. If you're a parent in the tech world or know someone who is, we'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at chow@parenthoodbites.co, and we'll be thrilled to add your experiences to our interviews. That's chow, CHIAO, at parenthoodbites.co. And to our potential sponsors out there, if you're a business or know of one that would like to support and partner with our podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can also reach us at chow@parenthoodbites.co. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Until next time, take care and stay curious.